Whoa, it might not be as crazy as you think it is, okay? It might be just regular old corporate shenanigans. Let's get into it. Stellar Blade director responds after patch censors holiday rabbit outfit, claims updated design was always intended as the final version. I don't know about you, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that for a minute. But let's get into what the creator here actually said about it, the CEO of ShiftUp, what he actually said about it. In a interview during a launch event on April 26, Kim was asked by an attendee if there had been any thinking of rolling back to the version before censorship. Now, we're talking about the outfit, right? The bunny outfit that we see up here in the title image, featured image on the article that Spencer provided us. You'll see her on the left. This is a kind of open sort of leotard costume. You'll see on the right, they've not only added glasses, but also a piece of fabric down here to disguise the boobage, if you will. The boobage, right? And so this is what he's talking about. And he says, understandably, we also recognize this issue. However, the final costume, the one with the piece of lace that hides her boobage, that we want is the final costume that we wanted to show you is indeed the costume in the version 1.002. Okay? Then he went on to say this too. He says, I want to clarify that is our final product. However, I know this answer is not enough to convince our users. There is an internal discussion going on regarding this. Okay, there is an internal discussion going on regarding this. So I think we'll have a chance to answer it soon. It's a very simple question to answer, right? It's a very simple question to answer. But if you know the details on how this works, you'll understand that this probably doesn't have anything to do with the Sweet Baby Inc. people being so focused on this game. In fact, this censorship may have started way back before Sweet Baby Inc. was fully drug out into the light and this discussion of forced diversity got started again. Gamergate 2.0, if you will, okay? This is something that Lunar Archivist brought to our attention here. Hold on. This is something that Lunar Archivist brought. We'll get into that part. Don't get too excited. We'll get into that part. When a developer wants to release a game on a console, they have to submit the game to Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony to make, not all at once. It's depending on who they want to send it to, but these are the companies and how they operate. These three operate in this manner. Okay, so just to clarify. And Sony, to make sure that the game adheres to their minimum quality standards and respects their copyrights, trademarks, and terminology. This is called submission. Submission is preceded by a certification pass, where testers working for or hired by a publisher go through the entire game with a fine-tooth comb to minimize the chances it will fail submission, a rehearsal before it is sent to Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony's testers to take a crack at doing the same thing. Okay, now that you're up to date with this, okay? Game disc cartridges are only manufactured once Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony give a green light to the manufacturing process. This usually takes a good 6 to 8 weeks before release date, okay? So what Lunar Archivist is telling us here, right, is that this usually takes 6 to 8 weeks to print all these discs out, to get everything ready for market, to actually pick it up off the shelf, begins 6 to 8 weeks before the release date. Again, that seems a little close in my opinion, that you're waiting that long before you slap the thing out. But what we need to understand about this is that these patches, right, that have happened here, happened after the game was sent out, meaning Sony signed off on Hard R. Sony signed off on this costume that they're having a fit about. They have to censor now, that everyone's like, oh, it's censored, stuff like that. Again, it's not because of the Sweet Baby Inc. people. It's not because of the forced diversity crowd. It's not because of their supporters. It's not because of Homeland Security that we can tell. The thing is that this company appears to have buckled underneath Sony's edict, right? Sony said it was okay, then they changed their mind. Seems real, congruent. Looks like a safe place to work, right? You might be wondering why ShiftUp goes along with this, though, right? Why did they just go ahead and allow this censorship happen after they were already given the A-OK that it was good to go for public global release? Why are they okay with all of this abrupt, sometimes brutal censorship when you take a look at what they're doing to some of the game? Like that Hard R thing, I consider that brutal because that's a reskinning. Somebody's day was involved in remapping that whole thing. That's not as simple as just slapping a PNG up on a wall. Everything has to be recalibrated around that blue being there now instead of the hard pink that was there. It's not like it is in real life. You just paint something over and slap a new graphic over the top of it. It's a little different on the video game end of it. So that was somebody's day. That was money spent to make that hard R disappear and change into crime. Okay? Similarly, these changes were for the release, but they were not advertised, right? We were shown this right here, Eve's comparison, right? We see Eve's comparison here. Let me see if I can open it in a new tab real quick because I didn't think. Yeah. So here we go. I'm very sorry. I'm more practiced than this. You'll have to forgive me, but here we go. So you have Eve here, uncensored, with her boobage up front. How you doing? Look at those. Those are quite nice. Thank you, Shift Up. Now the censor comes out here. So this is what you were delivered. So this is what was advertised. You know when you watch a commercial from McDonald's or Burger King and everything looks all shiny and delicious and, hot and ready to go? Here you go. Looks all shiny and ready to go, delicious and hot, right? And then you get this. It still looks really nice, right? That's still, like you get your burger when you go to the place. It's a little different than what you saw on TV. And now what I want to stress here is that this is kind of sloppy. These changes are sloppy. You saw a preview of it earlier when I clicked on the wrong tab. Take a look at this. The censorship parts are done poorly. They look like body paint, have a different color. It's obvious they were made in a hurry. Developers even forgot to change the outfit icons, okay? So you'll notice immediately on this screenshot right here, right, that my monitor's over here. This is what I'm looking at. So you'll notice immediately on this screenshot that you have this lower portion down at the bottom. It's marked with volume. So this is like a volumetric lighting effect. It gives a object in a 3D environment a feeling of depth and range to it. So these grooves you see inside of this thong piece, this thong armor, right? R-thong. Anyway, you can see how the light behaves differently against it. Whereas as you go just above where the censorship was added, they added more belts and lines. I'm not sure how that unscandalizes it. It's not like they put her in jeans. What I'm trying to stress is I don't understand the purpose of this censorship in particular. And again, apparently whoever had to perform it didn't understand it either, so they just slapped it together. Because as you can see, this looks like somebody sat down with that body paint stuff at the beach and drew some extra stuff on Eve's torso. Just for funsies, make it more anime-y. And that's what you're looking at here, is that these were done so abruptly and quickly, okay? So I'm building toward a point. You might be wondering where I'm going with this. I referenced it a little bit earlier, but I want to go a little bit further into what's actually going on with Stellar Blade, okay? So with the response to Stellar Blade. So this kind of encapsulates what's happening. So as you know, Grums is a guy that has been in big trouble with these folks on the left that are pushing for the censorship. It's what's driven a lot of focus towards Stellar Blade, is his kind of conflict with them. He's not fueling it. Mind you, he is a boob appreciator and fighting very hard to keep sexy women in video games, despite the efforts of our DEI enforcers that are forcing it everywhere it goes, right? Everywhere it'll fit, even if it won't. So Grums has caught a lot of heat, right? And this is the point I'm building toward. They put out a hit for him, right? This Tone Man, he's deleted all of his social media, by the way, so don't bother trying to find the Tone Man. Wherever he disappeared to, it's a spider hole somewhere in Iraq, probably. But $20,000 to anyone who makes this dipshit disappear. And he's advertising this, responding to Grums talking about Eve's uncensored uniforms and outfits right here, as you can see in the screenshot. So Tone Man's like not a big important person to my knowledge. He's just a random user. But this is how like intense the battle over Stellar Blade has become. This is a person who is pro-censorship, wanting to end Grum's life, right? Trying to ask or hire someone to end Grum's life. That obviously it's a joke. This person is not putting out a public call for a hit, right? But it goes to show the kind of anger they have over this situation. Now, a long time ago, this is where I'm going with this point here, is a long time ago, there was a problem with the Sega Japan company and Sega America. You may not remember this, but back in the 1990s, back in the late 80s, 1990s, Sega America and Sega Japan were on wildly different like trajectories. Sega in Japan was insisting that the machine sent to America was called the Mega Drive, whereas in the US, they did not like the sound of Sega Mega Drive. They didn't like the sound of that in English, so they pushed back and said they want to call it the Genesis. And that was really kind of the big kind of separation between the first big kind of separation between the brands. So as this started to decay between them, further instances of issues started to arise. Sonic the Hedgehog became a very popular character in the US, but it sort of flew in the face of the more conservative minded developers and, runners of the Sega Japan branch. And so as the Americans pushed for more Sonic content, because he was very popular in the US, got to go fast, too cool for school, that kind of stuff, Sonic was sort of hastily put together. We kind of saw this play out as the games into the 2000s played out, but these are in the 90s. And so Sonic was sort of put together, and then the Americans pushed it even further, right? Pushed it even further. We come to find out, though, that as this partnership continued to develop into the 90s, Sega Japan was like denying Sega America games. They didn't want the Americans to have adaptions done of Japanese games, most likely fearing because they'd be warped into these very attitude-based, angry things when in Japan, the Sega Japan wanted to keep these things very conservative-minded, traditionalist, entertaining for children sort of things. So as you remember, 90s was the Attitude Era, so this is where a lot of the basis of this theory probably came from. So as this decayed further again, Sega put their effort into deterring some of America Sega's outreach, right? The third-party developers who would contribute games to Sega, okay? And so Japan would interfere with this on occasion, like making different edicts and different demands of the developers who were third-party that had contracted with the Americans who were vastly more successful in third-party collaborations than the Japanese branch were. And again, eventually it all melted down with the Genesis being outmoded. But even then, the Americans tried to get the Genesis upgraded with a disk drive before the Saturn came out. But the Japanese were reluctant to do anything about it because the Mega Drive, as it was known around the rest of the world, was not selling as well as it was in America. And there just wasn't fuel to do that to the Mega Drive, as far as the Japanese were concerned, when the Saturn was on its way. So now we've had this brief little detour into video gaming history. I just want to bring you back to what I was saying about what happened here with Sony, okay? So Sony America most likely pushed for these post-approval censorship issues. Now you need to know too that Shift Up is a first-time AAA developer. Before this, they had Destiny's Child, a mobile game, and they fought to get that uncensored, by the way. This company has a history of fighting to get uncensored games out there. So Shift Up is in no way the problem here, in my opinion anyway. I don't see where Shift Up did anything wrong in particular. They, in fact, seems to have pushed every button right that they could, but the corporations were still not satisfied and ended up screwing them over in the marketplace at the last minute anyway. So this is what I'm saying, is that the American Sony branch, much like the Japanese Sega branch, was sticking their nose into a business that was working very fine between these two different corporations, most likely Sony Japan and Shift Up being in Korea, having, their own communications divorced from all the crazy DEI politics with Sony America. However, feeling left out from the whole process, yet going to receive the Stellar Blade game and have to market it, the Americans decided to stick their nose where it didn't belong and cause these late censorship things to happen in the game. And that's what I think happened here. I don't believe that the DEI enforcers, the weird gargoyles that guard game development these days, the Sweet Baby Inc. people, the Alyssa Mercantes of the world, I don't believe they were behind this. As Lunar Archivist told us, it takes 6 to 8 weeks for these games to get printed out and ready to go up on a shelf, and that was roughly when Sweet Baby Inc. got drug out. So that's not publicly drug out. So that's not when we were really experiencing That's not when they could have applied this pressure or would have had a reason to apply this pressure to shift up. However, it became a focus later on because they wanted revenge, so they went after it. That's what it seems to be, is they went after it for revenge because it was a sexy game that promised an uncensored version. However, coincidentally, Sony America had already began censoring it. And so these two trains, leaving two different train stations, collided on the same track. And that's why it looks like the DEI enforcers went out and made sure that Stellar Blade got all censored up. And they're celebrating it, right? Because they don't like this game, right? So it looks like they're taking credit for this whole situation. But in reality, it was more aligned with the mundane, day-to-day, intercorporate ego fights that these corporations have. Like, much like the government agencies fight with each other over dominance, over who gets to shoot who gets to arrest who. Similarly, inside of these multinational corporations, the branches representing different regions and nations often end up in conflict with one another because, what do you know? Cultures are different, which makes values different. How about that? And then you got BlackRock in the middle of it too, that makes everything more complicated. So the takeaway of this is that in reality, we have to fight for Stellar Blade, and we should let them know that we're on their side. And I like Grum's plan, right? He's got a plan here. He says he DM'd the creator. Grum's is unbanned, right? It's all taken care of. They've sent emails to Shift Up in support, and people are canceling their PlayStation Network Plus accounts. One thing I want to ask you is, why do you have a PlayStation Network account? Why do you have a PSN account? Like, you're paying to access the internet that you already pay for from your ISP. PlayStation is not providing you with internet. They're charging you almost $100 for permission to access the internet you're already paying for. Okay? I don't think you're losing anything when you drop the PSN. Right? And we get free Stellar Blade trending. Now, the petition, very important, okay? As of 11:01 p.m. last night, it was at 41,000. Now today, that petition is sitting at 47,467. The goal is 50,000. Now the link is going to be down in the description. Please feel free to add your name to the list if you believe that Stellar Blade should be set free and have an uncensored version, and Sony should just leave it alone. Sony Japan, Sony America, Sony in general should just leave it alone. It's a success. People love it. Even people who hate it love it. Okay? I think it deserves a chance. So please feel free to sign that below. And above all, please let Mark Kern, aka Grums on Twitter, know that we want him to live. He's a good guy. We need a guy out there fighting for boobs. All right? We're pro boobs around here. All right? Bounding into boobs. We'll see you in the next video. All right? And as always, good luck out there.